afternoon, everybody, and welcome to this afternoon's session on the range of careers available in the gaming industry at Interactive Futures. I really appreciate you taking the time to attend this. And as ever, there is a Q&A channel, and we'd love lots and lots of questions. Careers are really, really important to everybody. So, we must expect some great questions today. I'm lucky to be with a range of experts from across the industry. And in terms of the structure today, we're going to give everyone an introduction, and they'll talk through their backgrounds. We're then going to talk about the jobs industry today as we see it, what opportunities are out there for careers, and then also talk about perhaps future jobs, new roles coming through in the careers in gaming. And as ever, there's that Q&A channel for you to post those questions, please, and we'll try and deal with them as we go. My name is Chris McCarthy. I'm the head of recruitment for Third Kind Games in Leamington Spa. We're an independent organisation, and we've been there. This is our 5th year now, and we've made some interesting game launches recently. Blanco is maybe one that you've heard of, which is one of the world's first blockchain games. So it shows how innovative gaming is becoming. And this year, obviously, it's worth billions. So the opportunities to expand and develop your career are really important. I'm now going to introduce the panel, starting with Tiffany from Ubisoft. Over to you.
Yeah, my name is Tiffany Wild. I'm a gameplay programmer at Ubisoft in Leamington. I've been in the industry a little over 6 years, always as a gameplay programmer. This is really what drives me. Recently, I've been working on titles such as Starlink Battle for Atlas or the upcoming Far Cry 6.
Excellent, thanks, Tiffany. Meg, please.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. My name's Meg. I'm the recruitment manager for Codemasters in the UK. We have 3 UK locations, which are in Birmingham, Leamington Spa, Southern, and also up in Cheshire. So we produce racing games, and I've never actually worked on a game myself. I've always been on the recruitment side, but I've actually been in the games industry with an agency before this at Amicus, and then now Codemasters, around about 15 years now, long time.
Excellent, thanks, Meg. And Ara, over to you, please.
Yes, good afternoon. My name is Ara. I'm a senior environment artist at Rebellion, the company who's behind Sniper Elite. And I've been in the industry now for more than 8 years. I came here to the UK and actually to be able to work in there. And yeah, I'm pretty happy to be here today.
Fantastic. And Alex?
Yeah, hi everyone. I'm Alex Harvey, co-founder, creative director at River. We run a virtual reality studio, creating photorealistic VR. And my background is 10 years Codemasters, so just around the corner as well, based just around the corner from Codemasters.
Excellent. And over to you, Tommy.
Hi guys, I'm Tommy Prentice. I work at Exient, and we work on the Lemmings mobile free-to-play game and some few upcoming titles. I work as a marketing engineer, so in the publishing department.
No, that's great. And what you've probably found out from that is that a lot of people in the industry in Warwickshire historically may have joined from these larger studios like Codemasters, which originally did seed a lot of businesses over a decade ago. And I think today we're very much looking for new talents to come through from Warwickshire and beyond. And games is a global industry. It's important to bear that in mind. And in terms of the industry today, Tiffany, what sort of technical roles do you see are open for individuals?
Well, programming is probably the most technical, but not necessarily just a technical role. What I like to say is programming is just as creative as art or design. It's about finding creative solutions to technical problems. It's about, for me as a gameplay programmer specifically, it's about building those Lego bricks and putting all of the elements together to build the rules and the mechanics of the game world. There's also, without going into too many details, if you're a little bit more on the technical and math side, you might enjoy physics programming. One that people often love is AI. AI is wonderful. I'm fascinated by it. Building those behaviors, building entire swarms of NPCs. And you've got rendering, which is everything that you see on the screen, finding how to optimize, how to make that game run at that sweet 60 frames per second, or even 120 frames per second. There's lots of roles in programming, technical side, also tools. Without necessarily working on the game itself, there are still a lot of engineering roles you can have. Tools programming, so building things like a level editor for the level designers. You could have also build engineers and IT technicians who will just support the dev team. you want me to talk about the other dev roles, or would you rather leave that maybe to Ara, who can explain art to us?
That would be perfect, thank you. And in terms of that, Ara, probably now a good chance if you want to talk through those elements, please.
So yeah, I mean, regarding art, we are in a moment in which there are certain rules kind of like being established within 3D art. For example, we've got material art, we've got photogrammetry. Photogrammetry is a new media that it's becoming very important in AAA. And then, there are certain rules that didn't exist before that nowadays are getting more and more important. One of them, well, I mentioned material artist, I mentioned photogrammetry, but there are certain others, like for example, within AAA as well, you can specialize within environment art, you can specialize in foliage, for example. There's another role called foliage artist. And yeah, I mean, it's a very interesting moment because that means that you can choose a field of expertise, then you can get really in depth with that, and there are a lot of new opportunities opening for people.
So in terms of the artist, then, do you see that splitting into lots of different avenues? Foliage.
Yeah, so I'm specifically talking right now because that's my field, 3D art. Because then there are other fields such as concept art, etc., which is something completely different. But yeah, within what was called, and it's still called in many places, environment artist, there are certain roles that didn't exist before, and that now are getting more and more important. Like as I was saying, material artist is a very good example because it's basically the developer who knows about 3D art, but their specialty would be making materials, which means that they have to be very good at substance designer and probably at photogrammetry as well. And substance designer is a software that didn't exist like 10 years ago. So it's something like quite new. And it's something that if you learn how to use in depth, then yeah, I mean, your career can go, towards that direction. That's fantastic.
Oh, that's great, Ara, thank you. And Meg, what are your thoughts on the current roles across a larger organisation?
Sure. Well, I know there's a lot of parents watching today, and I just want to put it out there that parents shouldn't worry if their kids are interested in a career in the games industry. I want to assure people that it is a proper job. I think sometimes video games is given perhaps a persona in social media of being quite an insular and an inward-looking kind of pursuit, but working in a games industry couldn't be further from that. It is a very, very collaborative effort. It's a professional environment. It's all about teamwork and different specialties. As even within one section of art, as Ara's described there's so many different things to do. So that's kind of my first message to parents. And the second one, just to take it to a real sort of layman's level, we've got some real experts on this panel, so I'll keep it simple. There are many job families in the games industry that your children can look at joining. So in a very broad brushstroke, we're talking things like art, then we're talking design, we've got programming, production, which is basically project management, making things happen on time, quality assurance and testing the games. We have IT and technology, things like network, to try and make sure that the games are available to everybody all over the world very quickly. We have marketing. We've got somebody on the panel, Tommy, who's in marketing as well. We've also got the business support functions as well. So for example, I'm in recruitment, which is part of HR, but we've got finance, we've got licensing. So if you're a legal, you can get into licensing, publishing. It's a very, very broad brushstroke and a professional industry. So don't worry.
It's tremendously diverse. And Alex, your thoughts on the industry today, and a bit perhaps about your background, how you got into it.
Yeah, well, Meg, you mentioned QA then. That's obviously my original start, if you like. Yeah, I applied for Codemasters for 3 years on the trot. Yeah, so if you're a parent that is either egging your kids on to be in the games industry or not, it is sometimes hard to get into, but you've just got to be persistent. And on the 3rd year of applying, I got into QA and I worked on multiple games, starting from Grid and Rise of the Argonauts and over to LA and over to Holland. It was amazing. But I was only sort of 28, so it was a bit late into QA. But after a few years there, I then messaged the video team, because I've been video editing for years. I was like, I didn't even know if there was a video team. Codemasters is massive, you know, so when you're in QA, it's quite hard to know about the other teams. So I messaged Sam Hatton-Brown. I was like, can I come and work for you for free for a month? And she agreed. And then after that, I spent the rest of my time making game trailers until I left in 2014, then started a studio. So there is different paths for different people. But I always like what Meg was saying about don't be scared of games industry, because I've got a 16-year-old who I would love him to be into games, but he wants to be a plumber. So it's completely, you know, it's always like, it seems to be the way. But photogrammetry, like Tiffany, you were mentioning, and a lot of photogrammetry roles are needed massively now, especially in our business. The most recent job, Leamington Spa Art Gallery, asked us to scan, using photogrammetry, 12 of their objects from their collections. And that the output model for that was literally just an augmented reality view of these items, but we want to push it and put it into VR and have a fully interactive museum where we can pick the items up. But for that, the process is quite lengthy. Well, I'm trying to get it down a bit, but the cleanup and optimization of those objects is a role that we're literally employing for now. So people that use, Substance, Blender, Maya, ZBrush, lots of decimation. And our main thing at the moment is photogrammetry. So we're being asked to do photogrammetry assets for absolutely tens of different people, and not just games industry.
Alex, for any children, because what actually is that in layman's terms, please?
Yeah, so photogrammetry is the process of taking thousands of images, or tens of thousands of images, of any object, place, or person, and then rendering it in software to make a photorealistic 3D model. The problem then is it could be billions of polygons with lots of different textures, and all of that needs to be optimized. And it used to have to only be optimized for 2D screens, but now we've got to do 2 eyes in VR, because we're putting everything to VR. But optimization, photogrammetry is taking loads of images, making a model.
Brilliant. No, thank you, Alex. Thank you very much. And Tommy, what are your thoughts?
I think my role is actually a good example of a job that wasn't around 10 years ago. I'm working as a marketing artist, so I'm creating playable adverts. My background's programming, so I'm making playable adverts. I kind of act as a designer, bit of an artist and programmer on that same project. And that also includes making video adverts as well, so interstitials. And then in the publishing department, we have people that deal with user acquisition. So they manage all the numbers on how to get the people into the game. So in the publishing, there's a few roles that come up now which haven't been around at all before.
Oh, that's great. Thank you. And
while we're on the topic of jobs that weren't here 10 years ago, there's also jobs now that are very cross-discipline. 2 jobs that have come up recently that weren't there 10 years ago are things like technical design and technical art that really bridge the different disciplines. We're talking about the main areas in games: art, code, design, QA, production. But technical artists, for example, will be taking care of optimizing the models. So they'll do a little bit of like basically the pipeline. How do you export that model so it's like readable in the code and imported into the code and displayed? So they'll be really doing the bridge between the graphics programming side and the actual modeling, the 3D art side. Often if there's a problem with the model being too large and taking too much memory, we'll give it to the technical artist and not back to the actual 3D model artist. Yeah. So technical design is the same. If anybody is familiar or has heard about Unreal and Unity using like scripts and blueprints, technical design will be in charge of doing those blueprints. Often for me as a gameplay programmer, I will put some codes, have some components, some elements that the technical design can grab and use to build the templates of the different elements we're going to put in the world.
Yeah.
And this didn't exist 10 years ago.
That's great to hear. And probably a good chance to answer one of the first questions. Martin has asked, as a parent of an aspiring games developer who's going to university in the autumn, there are long lists of different programming roles with references to internames.org at the programmer entry level. I assume you'd be a generalist, then specialize later. Is that the case?
In a lot of cases, yes. And even in general, when you grow further into your career and you evolve into more senior roles, you'll have a tendency at smaller structures to stay as a generalist, because smaller structures don't necessarily have specialized department. However, at bigger structures like Ubisoft, where we're talking about hundreds of people, we do have the specialization. For us, for example, we've got some graduate roles open at the moment, and actually, as a graduate at Ubisoft, you're more likely to get into either AI or gameplay than generalist. But then we've had some people doing a year as that graduate role, doing a bit of gameplay, a bit of AI, and then moving straight into engine programming. So the progression after that can be quite quick.
Excellent.
And
That's
usually
great.
what we do is, if you do have a specific, my advice is like, if your child has any specific specialization in mind already, and they would rather specialize, to say it in the interview, because most companies are more than happy to slowly guide you into it. If you say at the interview, I really want to be a physics programmer, then they'll try and give you more of the physics tasks. But usually, yes, generalist and gameplay are good entry roles, because they expose you as a gameplay programmer. I have to use the physics code. I have to use the animation code. And so I get exposed to the areas. Same as a generalist, you get exposed to a little bit of everything, which makes it easier to specialize later.
That's great, thank you. And it's in terms of those new roles that are coming through, and we probably heard about it a lot this week. Meg, what do you potentially see as the new roles which will take us towards 2031 in gaming?
Gosh, it's actually quite a big question. I think that Tiffany's touched on it there, these hybrid roles that exist between the more traditional departments that I outlined for you. I think one thing I will mention here is that there's quite a big difference between working in a very large studio and working in a much smaller environment. So if your child or yourself, if you're watching this thinking of a career, have a think about whether you want to really specialize and get into one thing and become that expert and work in an area, or you're someone who prefers different hats and doing lots of different things. Now, that's not to say that there isn't variety in a big studio. Of course there is. But it wouldn't be unusual, for example, technical art, we mentioned that Tiffany mentioned there, bridging between the art team and the programming team. That role is more likely to exist in a larger environment as a specialism. When you're in a smaller studio, you're much more likely to have to use those hybrid roles as a link on to what you do every day. So I think there's quite a big difference between the two. It's just worth mentioning that.
No, that's great, thank you. And Alex, in terms of your thoughts on the future of gaming, where do you see it going?
Yeah, though really interesting then about hybrid roles. Do you remember? I say, do you remember back in the day when you used to advertise for a video editor? You would specifically get a video editor. Now, people that make videos or content are now classed as someone that does everything. So you can produce, direct, write, edit, everything. My thing now for people is, if you want to do pure code, then that is a pure thing that you can go and do. But for me, it would be get Unity, get Unreal, and just start making objects, dropping things in and just playing. You'll be you won't be a coder, but you'll be able to make your own worlds. And I think most of these roles are trying to get to the point where you can make your own, people want to make their own scenarios. And I think if you can get into Unreal, Unity, photogrammetry and modeling, you can just start making your things yourself. And that these roles are going to slowly, merge a little bit. And it is so true. When we're in a smaller company, we do not have like a massive code team. We've got 3 or 4 guys. Yeah. But just for example, Ollie, who's just recently started with us, 17 from Southern College, he, like one day of the week, he's coming with us to scan a Vodafone mast with a laser scanner, and he's learning how to do point clouds. The next day, he might be on reality capture doing photogrammetry. But when I ask him what he wants to do, he says, I want to do IT and security. So we get him on the user accounts and cabling in the office and things like that. So if it's a smaller company, you can definitely help people out in their direction of where they'd like to go.
That's great. Tommy's interject.
Yeah, I agree that the game industry is moving so fast at the moment. Everything's changing constantly. In social, we're seeing instant games on social media, Facebook, Snapchat. Recently, I turned my hand to a bit of tool programming. There's another role which Tiffany mentioned earlier, and even doing some crazy stuff like Instagram filter programming, get some filters that we can use for advertising purposes. So there's loads of stuff going on.
Because also there's areas around, is it community management? What, are you familiar with that, Tommy? Is that?
Yeah, so in my team we have a community manager, and that is another massive role. Becky, who does that, works on doing all the social posts, set up community engagement and relaying support information back to the team as well. So that's for the more socialites out there that want to be out there talking to everyone. That's another good role to think about.
Because do people have an idea of how big the communities might get in terms of playing a game in the world at any one time? What, does anyone set any targets?
I mean, some games have millions and millions of players and followers, you know. I mean, if I had to give one example from Ubisoft, I would be talking about Rainbow Six. We organize esports tournament. It's a really, really big game for us. And there's a massive community. There's a massive engagement in the game, pushing constant update, getting feedback. We posted another operator for the game recently, and that makes a big event out of it. Yeah,
because that will create a whole new raft of new technologies, new language, for example. Imagine a multi-language platform across the world. That would be quite amazing, and it shows how complex gaming could get. But Ara, there's a question that's just come through. Just wanted to ask you about this, and then we'll ask you about the new roles that you see coming through. But Ben's asked about his son, who's 12, who currently designs using 3D objects in Blender to use in Roblox games. And he's keen to further develop his 3D object design skills. And what areas and software would you suggest he pursues? And any other particular advice? And I think there's a lot of kids out there who really want to know how to get into gaming. You know, we know loads of people who got into gaming when they were, 11, 12, 13, 14. And I'm in a school. How can I do this? What's the easiest way, please?
I'd say that, yeah, starting with Blender is great because it's for free, and then he can try and he can see if he actually likes it. But what's mostly used in the industry is Maya or 3D Max. So I would say if he is really into games and he's decided and etc., the next thing is I would try and get either Max or Maya. These are not for free. So that's why, I always recommend, to start with Blender because it's a very powerful program nowadays and it's great. And then once he's learned that, then if he wants to, that depends on if he wants to get into a big company or a smaller company, because in a big company, as I was saying before, he's probably going to have to specialize, which means that not only, he will have to decide, do I want to be a character artist? So do I want to make characters? Do I want to be an environment artist? So I want to make, environments, everything that you see on the screen, basically, except for characters. Do I want to be an animator, which, involves 3D, but it's different as well. It involves, animating the characters and etc. So once he's decided that, he also will have to think about, okay, do I want to be in a big studio? Do I want to, be in a smaller studio? As Meg was saying before, do I like doing only one thing, specific thing? Or do I like, changing hats? It's really up to him. If he's going to go to a big studio, which is mostly my experience, then I would recommend, after learning 3D, then either learning a program, for example, to make materials, any other specialty, or like, as we were saying before, photogrammetry is really important, or something that it's also going to be, and it's starting to be really, really important, is procedurally generated content. That means there are some programs such as Houdini that create procedural content, which is used, for example, to place, let's say, for example, in an environment, to place trees, right? We don't place trees by hand. That would be incredibly boring. But like, there are programs that help us to place that in a natural way. And Houdini is an incredibly powerful program. You can do a lot of stuff with Houdini. You can also make with pieces, different pieces. You can make different buildings. You can make a lot of stuff. I think if he wants to have a very good chance to get into the industry, because it's something that it's really sought after, he could definitely try and learn Houdini. See if it's for him. I think at the point in which he is, learning Blender first, and then, as we said, learning another 3D program after that, that's great, because it's the right, taking the right steps first, seeing if it's for him, and, later on specializing.
Brilliant. All right, that's great, thank you. And sorry, Tommy.
Yeah, I think it's worth mentioning as well that making models for Roblox is a great way to build up confidence and understanding of the gaming industry. I started off programming Minecraft servers, and I've used that throughout my career already. So it's definitely worth keeping encouraging and keep doing.
That's great. And one of the other questions that's just come up from Aliyah Godfrey is around being an aspiring concept artist. So what specific advice do you have to become a concept artist? Ara, perhaps?
Yes. Yeah, because I wasn't sure, because I'm a 3D artist, so it's a different field. That's something that, you know, sometimes they say game artist, and you know, but there are different fields within. For being a concept artist, from what I know from friends who are concept artists, I mean, for any art role, you need a very, very strong portfolio. I mean, the portfolio is key. So I would say to start a portfolio on ArtStation first thing, and then gather as much feedback as possible from colleagues and get to know which other concept artists there are out there, because there aren't that many roles. There aren't as many roles as, for example, for 3D art. And from what I know, what works very well, it works for any field, of course, at any role, but what works very well is knowing what exactly people are doing out there. Of course, matching your skills to that, and then talking to those people, see, you know, if there are like any openings, any junior openings, and then starting there. Yeah, that would be my advice, basically.
No, that's great, thank you. Because with an industry that obviously we're all so used to NDAs, non-disclosure agreements, that we all sign, there's a lot of really open information out there that people share, you know, Discord, GitHub, other environments as well.
Yeah, but that's why, I mean, I was mentioning ArtStation. I think ArtStation is a great tool. That's where, you know, people post their stuff. You can find artists from any company. So like, for example, what I always tell as well as students is like, find the company you want to work for, and then find out about which artists there are there and which level they have. So for example, I know I want to work for Rockstar, right? And then I look for artists on ArtStation, because they will have some work on ArtStation, and then you can have an idea of, you know, which level of skills, what they are showcasing, etc., etc. Yeah. That is not protected by NDA. I mean, of course, they are not going to show you, you know, what they are working on if they can't, but probably they can, you know, they can show you stuff that they've done in previous games. And I think that's essential for anybody who's starting. I mean, I remember when I was starting as well, I was having a look at all the portfolios to see, okay, where I'm at, right? I mean, should I improve on this? Should I get, you know, this on my portfolio? What should I? And then I was asking people as well, like, you know, ask for as much feedback as you can. What do you think of this environment in my case? Or what do you think of this concept? You know, get yourself out there. I mean, it's the same for any other role, but for art, I think it's really, really important.
Meg, please.
Yeah, I think for concepting, just to pull that forward a little bit as well, is a lot of our hiring managers, and I'm reflecting what our hiring managers ask us to recruit for. I think they do quite like 2D skills, really traditional skills at concept phase, as well as the more technical sort of software side of things. And the reason for that is you need to be able to convey an expression and an idea, and also get through lots and lots of ideas. Concept phase, no concept artist can sit down and create the masterpiece in a wanna. It's not going to happen. You have to be able to constantly have that creative vision, creative source. So being able to do the traditional 2D skills as well, and literally with a free hand can be really valuable too. And that also translates to other industries, not just games, but, you know, there's if you've ever watched The Mandalorian, which I'm obsessed with at the moment, but at the end of The Mandalorian, on the credits, you see all the concept drawings at the end. It's worth staying to the end just for that. So it's that kind of power, and it's a real sort of root force of the creativity. So as Ara also said, it's a highly competitive area to get into, however, and that is the big challenge with concept, because there's many more people who want to do it than there are jobs. So I think being as open-minded as possible is going to help you there as well.
I would say as well, from what other concept artists tell me, to be aware that concept art is not the same as illustration. It's really good to have like really, you know, nice illustrations in your portfolio. That's nice, but it's more about communication. I mean, for example, in games, a concept artist would draw something that then later on us 3D artists need to understand. right? And need to model and need to know how to do it. So it's about being fast and at the same time being able to communicate ideas very well. That's what Meg was saying about iterating and, you know, getting a lot of ideas out there. So most of the portfolios of other concept artists, but they've got both. They sometimes have like really eye candy, you know, a lot of eye candy, really shiny illustrations, but they also have all this iteration and all these very well communicated, drawings, I would say, concepts in there.
That's great, Ara, thank you. And a question come through, which I'm going to hand over to probably Alex at this point. But James French has asked, what are the best applications for learning to code games on a laptop? Or Tiffany, I don't mind.
Yeah, if it's specifically code, then I don't know, I'd pass that over to Tiffany, yeah.
I'm happy to answer that.
Tiffany, thank you.
No worries. There are kind of two factors to consider when I answer this question. One is the level of coding that the person already has, because you know, not all software are equal at teaching you coding, and also how powerful the laptop is. Because there's having a good laptop with like a lot of RAM and processing power versus having just a standard laptop. There are some software you won't be able to run on an older laptop. In terms of level of code, if the person already knows a coding language and has a bit of background in code and a PC powerful enough, a laptop powerful enough, then Unity and Unreal are the go-tos, because these are the engines that are actually used in games every day by hundreds, if not thousands of people over the world. So that's definitely direct skill that will give you an advantage when applying for a job. But that's not, you know, that Unity is in C#, Unreal is in C++. There are blueprints, so you can get used to the coding logic a little bit, but ultimately, if you want to learn coding, that requires knowing either C++ or C#, and they are not the easiest language to learn. There are so many more coding languages that are better to start with than these two. Do you want to say something, Alex, before I carry on?
I just want to double down on the Unity Unreal thing. Definitely agree, that is the way. But there is so many things these days that are not as scary as code, like go and download a template of something from a store, drag it in, drag and drop, connect a few things. I did a bit of Visual Basic when I was younger, and that was just about enough for me, but it was just too hardcore. All of the lines of code for me, yes, they're needed in certain roles, but a lot of things can be learned with Unreal, dragging and dropping and working out what doesn't work. Just press play and see if it breaks, and then fix it. And you're a bit of a coder and an artist and a modeler.
Yeah, and to carry on with that, in terms of application, I'd recommend for somebody who has either a less powerful laptop or somebody who doesn't have code experience at all. Something I use at the gaming school when we teach young people to make a game from scratch with no prior knowledge required is we use GameMaker Studio 2. GameMaker is fantastic because, as Alex mentioned, it does have those drag and drop boxes, so you can drag boxes of logic. So you get to exercise that, what I call the engineering brain, so the problem solving, the puzzle solving aspect of programming. And in GameMaker, you can also turn this block of code into code. So basically you can turn that logic and it will display the code behind it. So you can see, okay, so assigning a variable, assigning how many HP the player has, it looks like this in the code and in the language. And that's a very, very, very good tool to learn. And it runs on any old laptop, really. GameMaker doesn't take any resources at all. So that's definitely for early entry level, something I'd recommend. Now, beyond making games, because there are also professional games made in GameMaker as well, not as many as Unity or Unreal, but there are some professional. I think Nidhogg was one of them, was made in GameMaker, very successful game. Beyond that, there's a website I'd recommend, which is called Hour of Code. It's a lot of small coding exercises made specifically for education and learning, and it goes at all level of education and all level of age as well. So you could start learning code. There's exercise for young people as young as 6-year-old or 10-year-old, for example. So
great. Tommy, did you want to add any?
Yeah, add into that. Scratch is another great one for the people really starting off really early. I've done some few educational talks with people around the age of 4 to 6, starting with Scratch, and then from there moving on to the language like Python and doing some like hacking of games, Minecraft, doing some custom stuff there as well. So for the younger ones, it's good to start off on these kind of visual ones as well, to get the flow of how programming works and understanding that way.
No, that's great to see. Thank you. in terms of the gaming industry as a whole, it's great to see a good representative panel on this call, because clearly, the population is 51% women, and nearly half of gamers are women. And just starting with Tiffany, this is a great opportunity as gaming evolves in the next decade. Girls at school, 12, and boys as well. We need more resources. But Tiffany, what tips and advice do you have for people at that sort of age, and women in particular, to enter the gaming market?
I'd say, really, it's the idea that games are for everyone. Also, for me as programming, I think what scares a lot of people is everybody seems to think that programming is that very nerdy thing, and you need to be a genius at math to get it. And you don't really, as a gameplay programmer, I don't use math all that much. It's also, what I like is that creativity of programming, that problem-solving aspect. And really, while I do write code, and that may seem a bit wizardry to some people, it really isn't. It really is just logic, it's flow, it's about, well, if this happens, then I do this, otherwise I do that. Really, programming is broken down to this. At the very, very basic level, it's just those logic statements. And there's nothing about being a man or a woman, having a certain disability or not, nothing that would prevent you from being a good programmer, nothing at all. We need more women. I'm not quite sure what scares women away. I think also back 30 years ago, games were marketed for young boys. That didn't help. But really now, it's all about, to me, I love the game industry because it's so open-minded, it's so welcoming, it's so friendly. I feel absolutely I don't feel less worthy or anything just because I'm a woman. To me, it's just the same. I just feel as much part of it as everybody else.
Right, definitely. That's great, because I think you have to remember there's a business case for this, because we will design better games. It'll be more involved in our audience with just a diverse range of talent actually developing the games. Ara, do you have any thoughts, please?
Yes, I would say firstly, don't listen to your imposter syndrome, because it's something that, everyone does have, but from my experience, women tend to have even more. And at least for art, what I remember it was really useful for me was kind of like focusing on progress, because sometimes you feel you are super far away from where you want to get at, etc. And it's quite important to, first of all, save your very first 3D model or concept art, or the very first one, and then look at it after a while, look at it after 6 months, for example, and then you'll see the progress. And that's the way, because it takes time. It's going to take time. It's not going to happen overnight. It's going to take years of specializing and developing your skills. And yeah, just don't listen to that imposter syndrome voice telling you, oh, I'm not good enough. We all have it, and it keeps on going. And yeah, you keep on improving. We all think we could be better and we could improve. And I'm telling you, it's going to be fine.
All right, thank you for that, Ara. Because could you? My daughter plays games; she's 16. But can you explain what the imposter syndrome is, please? Because it's useful for people to have that insight for the,
So the imposter syndrome basically is you having the feeling that you are an imposter at what you're doing. You're not good enough. You shouldn't be there, and they are going to find out. The people who work with you in this case are going to find out you don't know anything, or you are not good enough, or you shouldn't be there. And it's something that, I think most people that I know have, and all of us at some point, we have this voice like, oh, I don't know enough, I'm not good enough, I should be better at this, etc. No one, and mark my words, no one knows everything. And when you've been here for a little while, you know that, making games is a big effort, and it's a team effort. And it's a team effort because people know different things, and that's the beauty of it. Tiffany knows a lot about coding. I think it's wizardry, actually. But then, I bring my expertise on the table, and, you do something together. Everyone at some point feels like an imposter, and it's fine. You overcome it, you keep on working, you keep on improving. Each person has a different path. Also, I would say, don't compare yourself to others. Like, okay, this person did it in 1 year. Don't worry, just keep on improving, keep on, getting better. And yeah, it's going to take some time, and each person is different. But you'll eventually, I haven't found anybody or any woman who didn't get in eventually, who didn't try. If you try for long enough, you definitely get good enough, in my opinion.
It's if you want to, isn't it? It's the passion behind if you want to get involved in the games industry.
Yes,
Maybe
exactly.
there's some women and some men that don't want to be involved, and so they don't try and be involved. But I genuinely think if anyone with any disability, woman or man, if you're passionate enough by it and you want to be a programmer or an artist, you can totally do it.
Great. And Meg, I think, did you want to add to that, please?
Yeah, I think that's the tenacity is a really good point there from Alex, and it is in some ways related to the imposter syndrome as a bridge. It's a known behavior, more typical of women when applying for jobs. They will only apply to a position where they feel about 98 to 100% qualified to do it, or even more that, oh yes, I could do that, and then they will apply. And it has been proven in studies that men generally will look at a job and apply if they think they're about 60% capable of doing it. Now, I'm not quite sure where that behavior comes from. Clearly, it's completely endemic in a societal level. It is changing, but I think it certainly relates to the imposter syndrome. So following on from what Alex was saying there, the tenacity that is required. We had a panel the other day. Someone had made 100 applications before they got that job. And so I would say to all, as you know, men, women, every type of disability, cultural representation or ethnicity, you will still need that level of tenacity to keep applying.
Yeah. No, that's great. And of course, men, we only use one side of our brain. So women use both sides of your brain, both lobes. So that's important because then you make a very balanced decision. Tommy, just handing over to Tommy.
Yeah, I've been in industry about a year now, so I've not long got from all that application stage. So yeah, I applied for probably about 50 to 100, probably even sent applications to people in this call. So just keep trying, work on yourself, make sure you're always progressing your portfolio, doing code tests and that kind of stuff. So keep applying, don't give up. It does get disheartening getting rejections or not hearing anything back, but just keep going. You'll get there.
That's great. And no, thanks, Tommy. And Tiffany, something to add on that point, please.
Yeah, to put my 2 cents on it. Yeah, be bold and apply. Apply anyway. You think you may only have half of the qualification, just apply. What do you have to lose, right? A rejection, you just have to learn how to take a rejection, not personally, and just this wasn't the right place and time for you. Rejection is just another step to success. And for me, when I applied to Ubisoft, I had applied to many other companies, and that was me after already having 3 years of experience in the industry, looking for another job, looking for the next step in my career, and being rejected constantly, failing at the technical level as well, failing at the technical interview felt really terrible. And I applied to Ubisoft thinking, they'll never give me a job. It's Ubisoft, right? They're a big company. They could get anyone they want. Everybody wants to work for Ubisoft. I'll never get it. And then you go, what? I got it. And they're super happy with me. And they kept insisting on, we really wanted you and you specifically and nobody else. And I guess maybe there's something in there. Maybe there's some truth and I'm not as bad as I think.
No, that's a great, and so always celebrate success and keep pushing boundaries, definitely. Ara, there's a question come through around apprenticeships. Yeah, would you recommend doing an apprenticeship or studying at a university to get into the artist industry? Which one do we think is more effective?
So yes, I mean, if you've got the chance, definitely, because then you'll get to work with other professional artists and see how everything works. As opposed to, you mean like just doing portfolio by yourself, or?
No, in terms of the academic, doing an apprenticeship, which as we know is pretty rare. There's not many, certainly something that we're going to have to look at going forward, apprenticeships for 18-year-olds as an alternative. It's great to hear that Alex has got somebody coming in from Southern College, for example, but an apprenticeship sort of format as opposed to the 3 years at university. Personally, I think we recruit on, talent, capability, drive, tenacity, the ability to solve problems, not give up, very much a sort of yes and how type person. I
think that as much, if you can get more practice and you can get more like real world practice, that's great. So yeah, definitely. I mean, if you have the chance, go for that apprenticeship. What I know some other people did when they didn't find an apprenticeship is, as we were saying before, like they put themselves out there and they kind of like, showcased their portfolio, for example, on the internet, on Twitter, social networks, etc. And then, they started like following games companies they liked, and then they started on their own way. I don't know, for example, I know some people who started doing fan arts. You can do, for example, a fan art, a 3D fan art on a game that you love. Let's say you love Ubisoft games. So, I'm going to make a fan art on 6 Rainbow Siege, for example. And that gives you, let's say, a good way for recruiters when they are having a look at like thousands of portfolios, right? To basically think or that you could be a good fit for that company, because you kind of like their games, and you already did something similar, so you are probably quite capable of doing something, some environment kind of like the ones that they are doing at Ubisoft. Just an example. I know that for some people it worked, so it could be a good idea as well.
Thanks, Sarah. And I'm just going to hand it, Alex, did you have a point to add to that?
I was just going to say the same thing, but do that, but obviously hashtag it and tag everyone in that company, and then go onto LinkedIn and find everyone in that company and either send it to them, or just be really, if you think you've made something for a company, like I was going to say, if you want to get into Codemasters, make some racing content and tag everyone on every platform and send it them. Try and wow them with whatever you can make, whether that's code or games. But yeah, just highlighting on that. Do something and stick it out there and tag everyone in the company. Yeah,
that's great, Alex. Thank you. And Tiffany, something to add, please.
Yes, I'd even add to that regardless of whether if you go to university or even if you decide to do neither apprenticeship nor university and just be self-taught, because you can also do that in the game industry. You don't have to do an apprenticeship. You don't have to get into further education. Is also try and get a mentor. There are programs out there. There's Limit Break, I know Into Games has some. There's a Girls Network for young women as well. Try and find yourself a mentor that will teach you the skill, that will look at your portfolio and give you that constant feedback. That will help an awful lot. Also will open a whole range of contact and network and connections to you as well.
It is, and the good thing about gaming, it is a family at that global level. It's very well connected. I'm conscious of our time now, so just working from Ara onwards. Anything you'd add, very quickly, as just a bit of advice for somebody trying to get into gaming, Ara?
Yeah, don't give up, I would say.
Perfect.
Very quick, yeah.
Meg?
I would say whatever you're working on, whatever your discipline, get your portfolio right. Evidence, evidence, evidence what you can do.
Excellent. Alex?
Yeah, things are changing fast. I think we've heard that a lot. Things are changing fast. We've heard that a lot. But the key for me is games are not just going to be how they've been before. Games are not just going to be 2D, and they're not just going to be massive brands like Codemasters Racing or things like that. There's going to be experiences for like entertainment, TV and film. All these things now are just going to be coming into this world rather than the 2D flat screen.
Yeah, brilliant. Tiffany, thank you.
For me, I'd say, show your passion, show your diversity, show yourself. As much as anything, we're looking for skills, hard skills and soft skills in the game industry, but what we also want is personality. We want you. It doesn't matter how quirky you might be. My parents always told me, oh, dress like that, you'll never find a job. And I was like, well, I don't want a job that doesn't want me to like dress up the way I want. I don't want a job that says you can't have piercings or tattoos. I want a job that accepts me as who I am, whether that's being a person that kind of fits in the general mold or not. And we want that in game. We want that diversity. We celebrate it. So just come as you are.
Brilliant. Thanks, Tiffany. And Tommy?
Yeah, I think it's just important to say to make sure you love what you do, and that passion will come through in all your applications, and that will help you get the roles you want to get into.
That's great. On behalf of the audience, thank you, panel. You've been fantastic and given some really good insights into the world of gaming and the careers that are available. All the audience, you can use Hoover to message us as well directly. We're really keen to support and build on this event. And everyone, enjoy your Saturday afternoons now, and thank you very much for all your time.